Hi, 5th grade Parker Panthers. This is Mrs. Warren. Sorry I didn't post a new video yesterday. The weather was kind of not very conducive. It kept raining where I was. So today it's a nicer day. There's no rain. It's a little bit cooler and cloudy. So before I get started in reading chapter 10 in Guest, I want to talk a little bit about next week. Next week, which is going to be a short week because you have off tomorrow, which is Friday, and you have off Monday after Easter, which is next Monday. And so on those days, you do not have to go into Schoology or tune into my readings. You get a nice 4-day little weekend away from work. But anyway, next week, one of the things I'm going to be reteaching is theme. And so if you remember from lessons this year on theme is what idea is the author trying to get across to the readers after either a whole book is read, or it could even be a chapter is read, it could even be like a passage on Star. What lesson does the author want readers to learn from that particular book or story? So I'm going to read chapter 10, and while I'm reading chapter 10 aloud, I want you to be thinking that as you're listening along, what lesson am I learning from the author from chapter 10? And then again, you're going to have some theme lessons to work on next week. So let's go ahead and get started. I opened my eyes to find myself lying on the mossy ground at the foot of the tallest stone in the circle. Oh, just a little recap if you don't remember from chapter 9. So they finally get into the Darklands and they meet the Queen of the Kind Folks. And so Molly is looking for her brother. They present her with a boy, not a baby, and so Molly is having a hard time with one, trying to understand that her baby brother is now a little boy, and two, that her brother does not want to go back with her to go with see Mam and Daddo. He wants to stay where he is with the kind folk. So that's where we left off on our last read. So let me get back into this again. I opened my eyes to find myself lying on the mossy ground at the foot of the tallest stone in the circle. It towered over me like a robed figure from a dimly remembered story, dark and foreboding. Ooh, foreboding, it means like kind of scary, like looking like something scary or bad's going to happen. Guest squatted beside me, stroking my face with his cold hands. "Molly, wake up," he begged. Aiden stared down at us. "On your feet," he said. "This is no place to linger," which linger means hang around. Without any help from Aiden, I struggled to stand. My legs ached with fatigue, and I was weak and dizzy. The kind folk had gone and taken Thomas with them, leaving no trace of themselves behind. Clinging to Guest's hand to steady myself, I followed Aiden slowly down the hill, trying not to slip on the damp, mossy stones. How long had I lain unconscious? Was it dusk or dawn? It was impossible to tell. The gray light and misty rain cast a perpetual twilight in the woods. Once we were on the path, Aiden found shelter in a shallow cave and set about making a fire. Guest and I huddled together and watched the flames sputter on the wet wood. "What should I do now?" I asked. Aiden didn't bother to look at me. Frowning into the fire, he said, "You heard what she said. Go home. Your brother's not of a mind to leave the kind folk. The longer we stay here, the more the danger." Aiden laid 2 potatoes on the fire. "You need to roast another," I said. "There's 3 of us." "I count 2, me and you." "You left out Guest." "Why should I cook for him?" Taking a 3rd potato from the sack, I laid it beside the other 2. I half expected Aiden to remove Guest's potato, but he left it where I put it. Imagine that. Only a few short chapters ago, she had talked about leaving Guest at the crossroads. Now she's kind of standing up for him. I think she's really developed a relationship with him, And that's important. That's showing how the character is changing in the story, or at least changing the way she thought about somebody, namely Guest. "Where have you been?" he shouted. "Where have you been?" he shouted. "The kind folk nearly killed us." My dog stepped out of the woods. "I didn't know how close you were to the stones. I'm glad to see all of you unharmed." With a smile at Guest and me, he turned to Aiden, and the two spoke together in low voices. My dog shook his head, frowned, and then sat down beside me. "Aiden tells me you were less than courteous to Her Royal Highness. Her Royal Kindness. Why must you speak your mind without giving a thought to what you say? If the Queen hated you before she met you, she hates you even more now." Aiden glanced at me. "I doubt anyone has ever spoken to the Queen as that saucepot did. Someone should stuff a rag in her mouth. She's made things worse for us all." "What did you do to help?" I asked. "Nothing. Nothing at all. You stood there and watched, even after she hit you. You don't care what happens to Thomas, or me, or anyone else." "And why should I care? Your brother can stay or go. It's all the same to me. And the toad—" "Enough, Aiden," my dog said. "It shames me to hear you speak so." Aiden poked at the fire, his face lit by the flames. He said nothing, but anger steamed from him. Guest sat down beside my dog. "I miss you. I'm happy you back." My dog grinned and looked him up and down. "You've grown," he said, and leaned closer to speak softly to Guest in the language they shared. I sat alone and stared at the glowing odds and ends of the fire. I was tired, so tired of living like a traveler, with no bed of my own and no roof over my head. Always hungry, always cold, always wet from rain and fog. This was a dreadful place, and I was sick to death of it. My dog leaned toward me. "Such a sad little face you have. Surely you've not given up hope." I fidgeted with the locket, turning it this way and that, watching it catch the light of the fire. "Thomas wants to stay with the kind folk, where he is a prince." I sniffled and rubbed my eyes, determined not to cry, but a tear escaped and another one followed, and soon they were running down my cheeks, and my chest was heaving with sobs. "Perhaps Aiden is right," my dog said. "Since Thomas wants to stay, perhaps you should let him. If we sneak away tonight, we might escape the wrath of the kind ones." "You know I can't do that. I must bring Thomas home to Mam and Daddo." Aiden spoke up from the other side of the fire. "The half-wit will be the death of us all." I jumped to my feet. "If you hate me and Guest so much, why don't you leave? We don't need you now that my dog is here." "I say, you and me both should be on our way," Aiden said to my dog. "You have business to attend to, and there's a certain lass waiting for me." A lass is another word for a girl. Okay. So he's got a girlfriend waiting for him at home. Aiden lay down with his back to the fire. Guest was asleep under his blanket. My dog and I were the only ones awake. "Why does Thomas want to stay here?" I asked him. "Why doesn't he remember me? Has the Queen cast a spell on him?" The dog gazed into the dark forest where no light shone, not even moonlight. "Thomas has lived in our kingdom so long, he remembers no place else. Spell or no spell, he believes he's one of the kind folk now." "He was a baby when they took him. Why does he look older than he is?" "Surely you've heard tales of mortals who join the kind folk for a night of dancing and wake to find themselves old men in a changed world." "Yes, of course I've heard those stories, but I'd never known such a thing to happen in real life." I looked down at myself. Was my dress a little tighter now? Certainly my hair was longer. Am I older than I was when I left home? My dog shook his head. "You must bide with those ones in their dwellings to feel time as they do." I sat back relieved. For how was I to know? I'd no mirror to look into. And just as well, I thought, for I was dirty and ragged and my hair was a tangled mess. I wouldn't care to see my reflection. "But Guest, he's bigger than he was when we started," I said. "He grows at his own pace, faster than you, it seems." He smiled. And glad you should be, for how could you have carried him all this way? Medog turned his attention to Aiden. Get up and make yourself useful, he said. Fetch all the wood you can carry. You know as well the value of fire on a dark night in a dark land. Long after Aiden had vanished among the trees, I heard him crashing through the bushes, a sure sign he was still angry. Why do we need wood? I asked Medog. We always let the fire go out at night. Did I not say you're in danger here? Medog asked. We must build a ring of fire around us. None of their kind dare to cross over flames. I shivered. It's me they want, isn't it? Mostly, Medog said. But they don't care for Aiden or me, either. They detest guests, but they can't harm him because he shares their blood. They simply leave this sort to die alone in the forest, or they trade him for fine babies like Thomas. Guest sighed in his sleep and snuggled closer to me. Half kind folk, I thought, and half... what else? Medog touched Guest's head lightly. I'll keep him safe, and you too. I promise. I looked at the changeling's sleeping face. It shamed me to think how much I'd once hated him. In those days, I was no better than Aiden. Homely he is, Medog said, but he's a spunky one, do you not agree? Oh, yes, indeed. He helped me chase away the tinies and escape from Granny Hedgepath. Did he now? He did, but I saved my own self for false Thomas, the crying baby who changed into a wolf and tried to kill me. And how did you escape from the wolf? I pulled the locket from my dress and waved it in front of Medog's face. He scooted backwards so fast he almost fell into the fire. His face dark with anger. He said, Never do that again, Molly. Do you hear? Never. Oh, please don't be angry. I'm sorry. I forgot. Try to remember the next time you reach for that locket. Use it on them, not me. What are you, Medog, that you touch the fear of iron? You can't be one of them, but you and Aiden are not like me. I told you, I'm a traveler. But what are travelers? I don't know what he would have said if Aiden hadn't come back with a huge armload of wood. He dumped it on the ground by the fire, which had almost burned itself out. I hope that's all you need, for it's not to my liking to stumble around the dark lands, hearing voices and strange sounds, and almost losing my way. Medog and Aiden lay the wood in a circle around our sleeping place. What, Bella? Come here. Sorry, I've got my dog whining over here. Come here. Come here. Come here. She's just going to cry and sit there and look at me. Come here. Hold on 1 second. Come here. Why are you sad? Bella, come here. Bella, come here. Oh well, she's not only sad, she's crazy. Okay, sorry, back to the story. Okay, let's see. Medog and Aiden laid the wood in a circle around our sleeping place. A good fire will protect us from whatever the kind folks send our way, Medog said. When the fire burned strong and warm, Medog told Aiden to stay and tend it. I'll collect more wood. What about her who's to blame for our plight? Aiden asked with another scowl at me. Does she not collect wood too? It's Molly's place to watch guests. Medog plunged into the shadows beyond the fire. He went as quiet as a deer and left no noise behind him. Aiden sat at a distance from Guest and me. How do you bear to be so close to that toad? Does not his stink fill your nose? Why do you dislike Guest so much? I asked. Aiden spat into the fire. Everyone despises his kind, except you, and you are clearly a simpleton, which is another way of Aiden telling Molly that she's stupid. Medog likes him. Aiden spat again, harder this time, and the gob sizzled in the ashes. He's a bigger fool than you are. Tell me something, Aiden. I wanted an answer, so I tried to speak like a grown woman, not a child being lied to. What are you and Medog? Who are your people? Where do you come from? Aiden poked a log back into the fire. We're travelers from over the hills and far away. You're more than that. Ask Medog. Aiden rolled up in his blanket and turned his back on Guest and me. Left to my own thoughts, I watched the fire, Smoke blew in my face and made my throat choky, but Guest slept on. Every now and then his eyelids quivered as if he were dreaming. He grimaced, he moaned, he twitched, but he screwed his eyes tight shut and didn't wake. "What is your other half?" I whispered. "A goblin? A troll?" I studied his face. He was none of these, yet his father must have been a homely specimen, for Guest had not one speck of the kind folks' beauty. When my dog returned, he carried enough wood to last several days. I watched him build up the fire. When he seemed satisfied with its size, he glanced at Aiden. "Sound asleep," he muttered. "I'm awake," I said. The dog smiled and came to sit beside me. "What keeps your eyes open?" "I'm wondering when they'll come, and what they'll be, and what they'll do." The dog sniffed the wind. We'll soon find out," he said. "They're already on their way." I opened my mouth to ask my question again, but he raised his finger to his lips. "Shh. Something's coming. See the deer?" As he spoke, a herd of deer bust out of the woods and ran past us. Maybe 10, maybe more, their eyes wild in the firelight. I turned and watched their white tails vanish into the dark behind us. 2 or 3 owls followed on silent wings. Then came badgers, foxes, and a bevy of small creatures, all as frightening as the deer. "Animals know when danger's near," my dog said. "Storms, earthquakes, fires, kind folk on the move." I huddled beside him and waited, my breath shallow with fear. At first I heard nothing, but gradually I became aware of rustling leaves and twigs snapping, heavy breathing, murmurs and whispers, a darkening of the darkness outside the ring of fire. Gradually a shape emerged from the darkness. A man, I thought, neither tall nor short, nor fat nor thin. Behind him there were shadows that moved as trees would move if they were not rooted to the earth. Although I couldn't make out the man's face, his appearance was familiar, but it wasn't until he spoke that I knew him. "Molly," he called. "At last I found you. Come, let me take you home." I rose to my feet, my legs trembling. "Daddo, how did you find me?" "Oh, my poor child, you must be weary and cold and hungry." He stretched out his hand. "Come with me. Ma'am weeps for you and rues every unkind word she spoke." My dog pulled me gently back from the fire's edge. "No, Molly, it's a trick, like Granny Hedgepath and the wolf." My whole self yearned to leap the fire and run to Daddo. I missed him for so long, and there he stood, almost close enough to touch. "My dog, you must believe me. It's no trick. I know my own father when I see him." I struggled to free my hands from his, but he was much stronger than I was. Molly, stay with me," he whispered. "Don't cross over the fire." Another figure joined Daddo. "Ma'am!" I cried. "Ma'am!" I struggled with all my might to free myself from a dog. "That's my mother!" I was crying now, fighting the dog with all my strength. "Ma'am! Ma'am!" "Molly," she called, "the kind folk have given Thomas to us. We can go home now, all 4 of us, a family again." My dog held me so tightly, my wrist felt numb. "You must see things for what they are." Excuse me. "It's not your father nor your mother, but 2 kind ones glamorized to look like them." "Do you think I don't know my own parents?" My shouts woke Guest. He jumped up and grabbed my waist. "No, Molly, don't go. Trick, trick." From beyond the flames, Ma'am cried, "Please, Molly, we're here to take you and Thomas home. Do you not want to come with us?" "Don't believe that traveler. He's a liar and a trickster," Daddo said. "Be strong, daughter. Break away from him. Run to us." What do you think Molly's going to do? I don't know. She's been fooled, 2 or 3 times already? I say that she would go again, except for that she was being held back by Guest and the dog. Let's see. My father was right. The dog was a liar and a trickster. My true parents had come for me. They had Thomas. I was going home. No one, not even the dog, could stop me. In anger, I yanked the locket from around my neck and thrust it into the dog's face. With a cry of pain, he sprang back. I jumped the fire and ran toward my parents. Behind me, the dog yelled, "The locket! Hold fast to the locket! Save yourself!" Mam and Dado waited with smiling faces and outstretched arms. "Dearest Molly," they crooned, "sweetest daughter, you'll be safe with us." When I was almost close enough to touch Mam and Dado, I saw the shadows in the forest move and shift. I heard rustlings and whispers of the clink of metal. In front of me, Mam and Dado slowly changed into a pair of the kind folk. Horrified by my stupidity, I turned to run back to my dog in the fire, but dozens of kind folk sprang out of the forest and formed a circle around me. They were beautiful, each and every one of them, man and woman both, but their eyes were cruel and their smiles wicked. Terrified, I held up the locket, but they were too far away to touch, and I was too frightened to move closer to them. "Stay away," I said. "I have iron." Laughing, they joined hands and began to dance slowly around me, moving in a strange rhythm and fast and slow steps. They chanted, "Cast away the locket. Let the locket go. Come, Molly, come. Cast away the locket. Let the locket go." As the kind folk chanted, they danced faster until they became an endless spinning blur shining in the dark. Each flowed into the other as if they were one, not many. My ears filled with their voices. I forgot my fear. I forgot the Queen's angry face. I forgot Thomas. I forgot Mam and Dado and all that I'd ever known. Slowly, my fingers lost their strength. My grip on the locket loosened. I grew dizzy, lightheaded, and tired. The circle shrank. The dancers came closer, closer, and closer. Their cloaks brushed against me like spider webs. "Let the locket go," they crooned. "Let the locket go." From far away, I heard Guest's voice on the wind, rising and falling. "Molly! Molly!" Coming to my senses, I caught the locket just as it began to fall from my hand. The dancers were close now, brushing against me, lost in their dance. Lifting the locket high, I thrust it against their shoulders, their faces, their arms, their hands. The dancers screamed in pain. They broke the circle. They sprang apart. Safe from the locket at the forest edge, they took a stand and cried out to me. "Foolish mortal, you'll never see Tigernach again. He's ours now. We will burn your barn and your house. We'll kill your crops. We'll send plague to your village." Still shouting threats, the kind folk faded away into the darkness, but their threats hung in the air as if written in flames. I leapt over the fire and fell to the ground. Weeping tears of anger and pain, Guest knelt beside me and stroked my hair. "Oh, Molly," the dog said, "when will you learn?" I forced myself to look at him. He was indeed angry, and I lowered my head in shame. The way they looked, the words they spoke, how was I to know what they really were? "Have you not already forgotten Granny and the baby you thought was Thomas?" Aiden looked across the fire at me. Like most mortals, she sees what she wants to see. I clutched my dog's arm. "They cannot do what they said. Of course they can," the dog said, "and much more if they have a mind to. You have enraged them, Molly. They will seek revenge against you and your people." I heard Aiden snort scornfully. "But my dog—" "Lie down." He spoke in a harsh voice I'd never heard him use. "Go to sleep. I've had enough of you for tonight." "Sleep here, Molly." Guest patted the ground beside me. I lay next to him and took his hand. "You saved me." "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Molly now." "You saved me," I whispered. If you hadn't called my name, I'd have dropped the locket and they would have captured me." Guest smiled. "I shout loud, a big shout, the shoutiest shout I ever made." I like that, the shoutiest shout. "Thank you. You're a good friend, Guest. Maybe my only friend tonight. The dog is mad now, but soon he won't be mad." Gus yawned and curled up close to me. He drifted off to sleep. I lay awake until almost dawn, afraid to close my eyes, lest the flames die and the kind folk return. Okay, so if you remember at the beginning of chapter 10, I told you I wanted you to try to focus on theme. I wanted you to think of what lesson Mary Downing Hahn was trying to show us in, sorry, it looks darker, but hopefully it's still getting me light enough. Let's see. Yeah, okay. Well, not sure why it went darker. But, so if I think about it, and you know there's multiple themes for stories, chapter selections, I think about Molly and how she keeps getting fooled over and over again. I mean, they almost have her in chapter 10. And when I think of that, I think there's a few things. One is that things do not always appear to be as they seem. So sometimes something looks one way, and then when you get to know about it, you discover that the way you first thought about it isn't really true. I also think of the theme, don't judge a book by its cover, which means just because something looks really good, like the kind folk were really beautiful, it's not how they really were. So although they looked nice and they had the name the kind folk, they really were quite evil and bent on destroying Molly. So don't judge a book by its cover would be another good theme for that. So I want you to think about possible themes for that chapter and for each chapter as we go along, because again, you are going to have a lesson and an activity having to do with theme next week. So I want to say bye-bye to you guys for now. Have a happy Easter. Enjoy your Friday and Monday off. I know it's hard, you can't get together with extended family, but maybe there's something fun you can do for Easter in your house, or at least just, I don't know, love each other a little bit more. I know that people can get kind of tired of being kind of locked in with their family for a while, but you know, just think about how much you guys love each other. And with that, I'm going to say bye-bye, guys. I'll see you with chapter 11.